Hello, everyone, and welcome to Channels Television's continued coverage of the Anambra governorship election 2021. I'm Sean Kimbaloye, live for you in Awka, the Anambra state capital, from our makeshift studio, where we're bringing you all the details, the update, and the latest about the governorship election in Anambra state. It's been some development, and it does look like things have not gone exactly the way INEC wanted it to go. This time around, INEC had given us some breaking news a few hours ago, and it's about the fact that the election will continue because of the malfunctioning of their new baby, the bimodal accreditation system, which will help to identify every voter that call at the polling unit. So this is going to take a focus tonight on the program, because as it stands, and it does look like it's at the point that it needs help. And tonight we'll be looking at what needs to be done to help get out of this stalemate. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Let's begin by letting you know twice today, INEC has given a press conference, giving updates on the election. The election which opened today, the 6th of November 2021, at about 8:30 a.m. in most of the polling units, and polls were expected to close at 2:30 p.m. But in many places, the bimodal accreditation process did not go according to plan. It failed in most places, and elections were delayed. Let's take a listen to the INEC Rec, Dr. Okechukwu Orji, who gave a press conference alongside the National Commissioner of INEC, Mr. Festus Okoye. Take a listen to them.
We are now receiving information on areas where, one, there were resistance to deployment by the Commission. Two, there were disruptions to the election process that already commenced. Three, where we have sustained malfunctioning of the accreditation device, the BVAS. And four, where we were unable to deploy as a commission. In each case, the Commission's regulations and guidelines and other existing laws will be used to address these issues. Where elections held, collation of results will proceed, and the applicable EC40G instrument will be used in line with the provisions of the electoral law. If there are areas where there's a determination that the collation of results cannot take place at the RA collation centers, collation of results will now take place at the LGA collation centers.
If we have 2,000 voters on the queue by 4 p.m. today, until the last voter on that particular queue votes, the poll will not close. So if the last voter votes on Monday, voting will continue. That's exactly what we said.
And then you heard what the INEC Rec said there, and Mr. Festus Okoye, the National Commissioner of INEC. Well, there are more reasons given for the extension. First and foremost, the first time when they did extend from 2:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. We met up with the INEC rec, Dr. Kichiku Orji, and he gave some reasons. I'd like you to listen to some of the reasons he gave in an earlier chat with Channels Television. Take a listen to him.
Part of the reports we got regarding our deployment in the different polling units, we were not able to fully deploy in some of the polling units, and because of several reasons. One, we were prevented by community members in some local governments from deploying, so we had resistance from community members. In others, we had our materials, election materials, snatched and destroyed. Example is Oba 1 and Oba 2 wards, RAs, in Idemili South local government, where materials for up to 57 polling units were snatched away.
So what are you going to do in that respect? Do you have alternative plans? Because if materials are snatched and destroyed, what would you do? Do you have alternative to replace them? Or what are you doing to the election in those areas? Are you postponing election in those areas, or what are you doing exactly?
This is a decision that will be taken after this, but the process has to be completed, and then a thorough assessment of what has happened will take place. And then the commission will now be in a position to state the next line of action. I don't consider them major security issue, because the security situation has been very, very pleasant to us. In fact, it's a pleasant surprise to many who expected that there will be breakdown of law and order in Anambra in the course of this election. But you can see that everything went on quite smoothly, quite peacefully. The challenges we had were that some of the transporters that we had made arrangements with and paid their sign-on fees upfront had reneged and declined to offer their services. And some of the ad hoc staff that we had recruited could not continue, dropped out in the process.
All right, then you heard the INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner in Anambra State, Dr. Kichuku Orji, about the reasons for the extension of time. He did say that there were attacks and there were disturbances by people in some of the communities, and that's the reason why there were delays in the start to the election. But some of the candidates in this race are already talking. They talked about the election and how the exercise went. First and foremost, let's begin with the candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, who spoke after he eventually got to vote, because it took almost 5 hours for him to get accredited. He was one of those who experienced some problems in getting accredited. Professor Soludo voted at Umueze Usuofia of Agwata local government area of Anambra State. And here are some of his thoughts about the exercise.
You can see the crowd in here massively. I understand over 700 of them that came, 800 of them that were here since 7:30 this morning to cast their vote. And probably, I understand, maybe about 20 have been able to do so up until this hour, which is almost 4 p.m. The close of voting. I don't even know, even if you put electricity here, at the rate at which the machine is going, maybe one person per hour, I'm not sure you'll finish even till tomorrow. So it's quite very concerning, quite frankly. And what is happening in my own polling booth here seems to represent largely the pool of the report that I have gotten around the state. Several places, a few places, I understand, they say it worked relatively well. But in a vast majority of the places around the state, it just hasn't worked well. I understand some people have now, over the last 30 minutes, in some few polling units, randomly across the local government, because I'm in touch. I haven't left here since 11:30. I refuse to leave. I've got to stay here and I must cast my vote. But I won't jump the queue. I'm not going to jump the queue and then get, be one of those privileged 20 to vote. No. These people, these elderly women, some of them in their 70s, some in their 80s, have been here since morning. And they can't get to vote. Several have left. I've seen hundreds of them walk home because, of course, they can't sit here all day going. So I've just seen the release by the INEC President Electoral Commissioner talking about the extension, namely that if you are here if you are here by 4 p.m., you will still be allowed to cast your vote. That's fair enough. And there is also implicit in it, my own understanding, that there is a possibility of extending the voting time through to tomorrow.
Then Professor Chukuma Soludo of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, his thoughts after the casting his ballot. You heard some of his reactions to the election. Let's go to Inewi in Otolo, Ward 1 of Inewi South local government area, where the candidate of the YPP, Senator Ifeanyi Uba, cast his vote. He also shared his thoughts about the exercise in Otolo, Ward 1 of Inewi South LGA. Take a listen to him.
The most important thing is to appreciate people coming in, people trooping in mass. You can see, I don't think we can have what they call apathy from this polling unit. People are here to vote. We have some little challenges with the biometrics, but I hope we'll resolve it. In my own, it took some time, but it was sorted out. But there's delay in materials coming to the polling units, and we need to look at it. We have some challenges, and we have some reports, and I want to address that. Well, we look at what happened, because for me, I'm sure, you can see, this is, I did it in Senate, and I'm going to do it now. They should conduct their behavior very well, exercise their civic responsibility, and then at the end of the day, we'll look at the results.
Then that is Senator Ifeanyi Uba of the YPP. Let's go to Agwata again, where the candidate of All Progressives Congress APC, Senator Andy Uba, cast his vote at Ward 16, polling unit 17 in Uga, Agwata local government area. He also shared his views on the exercise. His reactions at some point. Also, Valentine Ozigbo of the PDP also cast his ballot. It is at the Amesi ward of Agwata local government area. All right then, let's get the conversation started and the assessment of this election based on what we're seeing, based on INEC is saying. We may not just be getting the result as early as we envisage, but the exercise in some areas we understand is continuing. Tonight, let's first and foremost look at the conduct, and later on we'll look at the security part of things, because the conduct now is it's somewhat kind of stalemate that we have seen. I'm being joined by the first Vice President of the Nigerian Bar Association, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and the lead of, you're not a senior advocate?
No, I'm not.
Okay, apologies. the first Vice President of the NDA, Mr. Popo Martins. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
Thank you
for seeing the vision.
All right. Since I said it, it may just happen.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Ezenwa Nwagu, he has been with us from morning and here again to give us an appraisal of what has happened today. He's on the board of Yaga Africa, one of the election observer group, and also a member of the election situation room. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Pleasure.
One man that you perhaps know too well, a former resident electoral commissioner in in Rivers and in Bayelsa State, isn't it? Mr. Anedi Ikoiwak. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you very much.
What a way to assess this situation from the NBA point of view, from the election observer point of view, and from someone who had also been a resident electoral commissioner. You know where it pinches, because I know when you were in Rivers, tough elections that you have also supervised. But let me begin with you. With what Mr. Orji is facing right now, is like a stalemate, where you have to extend the timing of the voting in an election like this, testing the beavers. What does this mean? Where do you think the issue came from?
Well, I want to say that the introduction of a new system for accreditation and the voting, which has not actually gone through a lot of tests running, so on, will actually have effects. And considering the fact that the election in Anambra had been an election that there was this issue of whether you will hold or will not hold and what have you. So there was tension everywhere. And the expectation was that INEC would deploy whatsoever they have as a new method and try to improve the credibility of the elections. And I think that is what the Commission was trying to do. And the course of doing that, the sensitivity of the device may have affected some of the things that they were out to do. So I think that they will need to have to look at the sensitivity of that device. Because I remember that when INEC introduced the car reader newly, there was that hiccup at the beginning. And the ICT and other ECOP in INEC had to put their heads together and look at how to improve on the device. So I will advise that we take this as a part of our learning process to improve our electoral system. The fact is that there is some element of sincerity on the side of INEC to improve our system. And let the Nigerian people go with that, so that after Anambra, we'll have a better run in the next election, maybe in Osun and Ekiti. Then before we get to the general election in 2023, we would have taken care of some of the hiccups that we have.
I wanted us to, from the control room, if we can get that device, in case for those who are not in Anambra or who are not in Anambra who do not know what the device looks like, if we can show them that it looks like a tablet. It has a point where you can use your fingerprint to swipe and get accredited. It also has a screen where you can see in the details. I don't know if the control room can show our viewers what that device looks like, what became somewhat kind of a problem for INEC today. But beyond the beavers is also the issue where Dr. Orji said that there was some disruption from people in some community that did not allow them to deploy early enough. What are your thoughts on that kind of situation? Okay, so that's the device there, Mr. Nwagu. On the failure of the beavers.
Well, I think it's exciting that we are shifting from the point of whether election would hold or not hold to the point where we are examining the administration of election. That for me is key. that first and foremost, I was making a joke. I said, I'm now hearing about public outcry that the beaver did not function in many places. I didn't know that we had public that would, cry in Anambra about it. So we're excited about that. But all of this, the bigger challenge is that INEC anticipated this, and that is why this election was christened an unusual election. Unusual because you knew that even in good times, there are elements who may want to disrupt the process. So what was important was what was the remedy mechanism that was on ground. And all the time that INEC was talking prior to this time, when it was talking about having done 12, 13, 10 of what's in its bucket, it kept talking about the fact that it had contingency arrangement should this, because you would have done several scenario building. So I think that what is important is the remedy that has come, which is to say, yes, there were disruptions, let's extend the time. And I think that for me, it's fine. Like he said, you have a commission that is constantly working to improve the process, and that is very key. Every time is a learning curve, but technology can only enable a good process. Technology enables your good process. If your process is bad, technology will not enhance it. So we have a situation in which we also need to now interrogate the Commission's technology acquisition and adoption platform. It's not interrogated. You had 87 polling units in Isoko South 1 Federal Constituency, where we tested these beavers. And then we are taking it wholesale into 5,000 plus polling units. I think there's something that is not sitting well there. We needed to have scaled up, incrementally. And that's the way to go. So because technology, no matter how beautiful it is, will have hitches. And that hitch can cause you, embarrassment, the kind in which we are trying to get out of right now. But whatever it is, we've made progress. We've come to that point where we are embracing technology, we are learning from it, we are failing, we are reworking it, and at the end of the day, we'll see how we improve.
There are legal implications because the law stipulates usually the window for an election, and when for some reasons you have to step out of that window, there are legal implications. Mr. Ipopo Martins John is here to give us from the NBA. I'd like you to also comment on the issue of the beavers that has failed INEC today and failed the people of Anambra State, partly in so many places. Did you see this coming? Are you disappointed?
I'm highly disappointed. Let's just say the way it is. I'm highly disappointed because prior to now, INEC has upped their game. I was in Edo State. The whole process was beautiful. In recent times, all the elections conducted by INEC have been an improvement on the past one. Then we're expecting something, if you cannot maintain that standard, please don't drop below that standard. And all of a sudden, there's a drop in that standard. When we were first hearing the reports from our various agents that the devices were not working, I was very surprised because we have not heard of INEC. The INEC device is not working for quite a long time. We're thinking it was going to be maybe in this localized area, but eventually it happens to be statewide. Now the question is, if they have tested, the problem is not INEC deciding to upgrade on the system of the device they are using. No. The problem is not knowing that there might be hitches like this and prepare for same. And I want to say that this election is one of the best times that INEC had the opportunity of writing their name in gold. Why? Because the people did not actually come out as expected. Now, if the people have come out as expected, there will be chaos, there will be fight. But because they were restricted in numbers in the polling units, from our perspective, the voting strength was about 10 to 12% of the total number of voters in the voters register to do the comparative statistics of it. So assuming about 20 to 30% came out to vote, it will be chaotic. So I really do think, well, thank God they are adopting better technological devices, but it is not too good that they did not on their own, humanly, they didn't upgrade their own thinking process to envisage a situation like this on how to tackle it.
Well, I don't think that there is usually a backup, a manual backup, should the technology fail. Well, one of the assurances INEC gave for this election is that that device have the capability of working online and offline. That it has the data on for every polling unit loaded on each of these devices, so it can work without having to go online, assuming it was a network problem. But this time around, I'm not sure that it was a network problem. It does look like it was a functionality or the issue of the functionality of the device, and also in some cases from some of the reactions that we have gotten about the usage of those who are administering it. So you want to talk?
We ended this go beyond the device, how it works or it was not working, to look at the deployment of the HACCP staff. In the situation in Anambra, we need to know whether those persons that were trained for this election were the actual persons deployed. You know, in an election is a process, but the day election is an event. When the process is put in place and the event comes, it's just like a theater. You draw the curtain and the play has to go on. You know, so on the election day, in a situation where a trained personnel is off the beats, you may have a situation where the play has to go on, and persons now put on that beat may not have had the know-how of handling what is.
Did you think INEC shot itself in the foot? Because for almost 8 years, INEC deployed the smart card readers, and there's a manual process. Should the smart card readers fail, there is a manual means of backing it up. There is what they call the incident form that you have to fill. But I'm not sure there is an incident form in the case.
No, there's a challenge. We shut down the incident form because it created opportunity for manipulation. But what is at stake here, in my view, is training and usability of the EVA. You found out that, yes, my brother was talking about the contingency arrangements that had to be put on the ground. They have what they call the technical assistance. But the challenge is that if you follow how this election came without, standing in for INEC, you will know that they have Anambra on ground had the real challenges in terms of even having to work or just about 3 days in a week, running helter-skelter, their offices were under attack. All of those issues, you need to bring it to the fore. But the challenge, like we kept on saying, you don't lower the standard of integrity of the election because you are doing unusual things. Because the truth of the matter is that if those technicians were thrown in, and they were thrown in most places where they thrown in, many of them didn't even know what to do. That's what we saw where we went to. They came to the place, there is a lift that got spoiled in the hotel where I am. The man that came to repair it was reading manual, was now studying manual for a work that he was brought, which means he had no understanding of the work that he came to do. But like we need to appreciate that is a learning curve for us as the people, is a learning curve for INEC. But we need to understand and appreciate that for me, and I've continually told Yaga Africa in the statement when the beaver was introduced, we embrace it with cautious optimism. We said let's scale this. There was a lot of chest thumping after Isoko, the federal constituency, and I said it's 87 polling units, so you shouldn't, beat your chest.
That wasn't a good test for statewide.
Yes,
you're talking about less than 50,000
and then
voters.
Here you have 5,000 polling units with voting capability of about 2.5 million people. But it's too close to call now in terms of to say what the overall percentage for voting in this election is, because with this extension, you need to be able to round it up to be able to say this is what the voting outcome, the number of people who came out.
But let's also look at what INEC said they experienced, and some of the reasons why they extended the time of the voting. They said in some communities they were disrupted. The exercise was disrupted. That's one of the reasons. Transportation difficulty. That in fact, and this has happened severally. Now the issue, and this also brings the issue of contract and the breach of contract between the transportation companies, the association of the transporters that went and met with INEC. They were given money to execute the job, but they didn't show up. That's what INEC told us today. That some of these guys, at the last minute, on the day of the election, they pulled out on INEC. What do you have to say to that?
I will agree with them, because it also happened to us. We made arrangements for certain vehicles to convey us around, but eventually, in fact, some of us have to stay back in the hotels, but we didn't have a vehicle to move this morning, and they have to pull back just this morning. When we were calling them, where were you? They said, we're no longer coming. So I will assume, because if I even while on the field, I was looking at youth corpers and those who were working as the presiding officers. I actually had to deep in my heart to really appreciate them, because from the tension that was in the system, that was in the state, prior to now, it takes the heart of a lion to come out to say you want to conduct that election. Also, if INEC is saying that part of their personnel, that's adult personnel, pulled out, we must have to agree with them. But on the issue of community disturbance, to be very frank, we didn't hear such a community.
That's one of the things that Dr. Oji said. There were resistance in some community. Yeah. Apart from the resistance, is also disruption. And in fact, they were not allowed entrance by some officials.
There are Yaga observers who also were denied in a particular. But the big thing, INEC will need to learn expectation management. I think that if you understand that you are dealing with a sociological system, that there will be variables that you cannot control. The kind of optimism, infectious optimism that comes. Every question that was posed, there was this response that we have contingency, because all of this, there is none that is not that is not known, that was not expected. But I listened to my brother who is in charge of information, and he said this was going to happen, but that they knew that there will be some of their staff who may not be able to deploy. And the expectation was that we will have backed it up with some of your own staff, because the outsourcing of conduct of election does not deprive those who we pay money to conduct election, because this is just to raise the trust level. That was why you now brought in all of these people. There are staff of INEC who are actually paid to conduct election. If there are challenges, the expectation is that they will have been trained
to respond to
it, except if they themselves
are part of it. Mr. Kowak, I know you experienced, because I spoke to you, you had this kind of frustration where transporters pulled carpet off your feet on the day of election. The legal implication of that, Mr. Akpofo-Martin?
Well, it depends on what you mean by legal implication. The contract between the drivers, the transporters, and INEC, they will sort it out contract-wise, because there's a breach of contract. But the contract between INEC and the people, that's what he's saying, that they have given assurance that they have contingency plans.
But the question is, this is a civic responsibility managed by INEC. INEC could not do this all by itself. It contracted Transport Association and transporters to say, help us achieve this. And at the last minute, there was a breach of that contract. Is that a civil offense or a criminal offense in that sense?
It's not a criminal offense. It's a civil contract between transporters and INEC. So
could that be tantamount to sort of sabotaging a national assignment or an assignment that is of high importance.
That would be stretching the argument too far, because we all agree as we sit here that the environment itself did not call for confidence to come out. So if everybody has this.
But why did you take the contract? Why did you collect INEX money?
Yes, because.
Why did you say you were going to transport their, and on the day of the election, you failed to show up? I mean,
let me finish.
Because I think it goes beyond breach of contract. It goes beyond.
No, I will not agree. What was, we were not there when the terms of contract were entered. Probably the transporter might have raised all these issues, and they assured them that before then, the security will be tight or things will be better. But they did not see appreciable improvement in the security system. And they had to pull out. And they didn't even pull out yesterday or 2 days before. This morning, that is to say, overnight, they assessed the situation and they came to the conclusion that it's not safe to come out.
No, but Mr. Elkowa, you have experienced this kind of thing before.
Yes. I think I will look at it as a bit of sabotage on the side of the transporter. We've had these situations where people just think of what they can get from the system, not what they can put, what they can bring to the system. People just think that's okay, it's part of my national cake. I pick up the money, you have a contract to deploy a bus. On the day of the elections you put out, you did not even give the commission a period, to pull out so that the commission can make a contingency plan. He has already laid out that this number of persons will go on this bus, and immediately 1 or 2 is out. You are now putting that process in jeopardy because people cannot move. So I think that we should look beyond people not just looking at the security situation.
I don't think it's just a breach of contract.
So.
I think it goes beyond that.
Sabotage that system.
Yeah, because now what you have done is that it's going to cost a lot of money. It costs a lot of money to prosecute an election. So when you pull out, not because of a mechanical problem, or you not just 1 or 2 vehicles, several of those vehicles.
It's a contractual problem. I think the prevailing conditions that necessitated others discharging this responsibility exist for the same people who now will hoist this regime of excuse about insecurity. Those who, because it's not as if the vendors all on the because it's a union. There's a union that has control over this.
Yeah.
So this union, some of their members, in spite of whatever we are talking about, discharge their responsibility. And in some places, some did not do that. And my worry is that this union has become very, whether it's 2019, whether it's 2014, their service delivery, has always had this challenge. So in dealing with them, we had, I think, at some point, we had talked about what you must be thinking around. If not these folks, what can we do? Yeah. Because we can't continue to face this.
I remember there was a time that we even had a conversation. Yeah. Instead of using this guy, we may not think that there is a high level of importance attached to whatever they are doing. Yeah. There are more established transport companies.
That's what I'm saying.
We had that conversation.
That's what I'm saying.
So these guys, they behave like as if they don't care, and the whole system has been messed up just because of their failure.
Anybody who talks about, let me tell you, if you went into the community, you will see that the determination to hold this election is not so much, as important as the security became, the community themselves. And we are, like I keep saying, we are very uncharitable to ourselves. All of us have called the people of Anambra to come out and vote, and they responded to us. They did respond to us. There is a lot of their elders, everybody said, come out and vote. If you go to the communities, you see the way I've told people that even if you bring a whole contingent of army and navy and if the community people don't want election, they will not have it. They will not have it. So these folks who continue to sabotage elections, we need to begin to think around how to work around them. Because this is this become perennial now.
It has become.
It has nothing to do with security.
And again,
this is a culture.
Okay, Mr. Kowa.
I think that INEC should look at their agreement, whatsoever they had with the transport union. Because I know what INEC agreement with the transport union is not a state affair. It's a national affair where the Nigerian Union of Road Transport sits down with INEC and agree, and then communicates to the states. And the resident electoral commissioners at the state had to also meet with the union at the state level. Then there is also arrangement where the EOs also meet with the union at the local government levels. So it's not something that you think is an ad hoc thing. It's something that is in existence.
Mr.
For some years now.
Yeah, let me ask you this
that,
question. Yeah. I'm not sure they are on the same level in terms of the engagement. INEC engages with political parties before an election. There's a consistent, I think, the quarterly engagement. You can clarify for us. There's a quarterly, I think, engagement with the political party, with the civil society, and security. I think INEC needs to start thinking about bringing these guys also, whether as part of the security or part of another sector that needs to be engaged officially, because I think it's usually an ad hoc arrangement in engaging them. Because if they are seen as a stakeholder, because the kind of engagement that INEC has with the security agencies is another level. So they see themselves as part of it. The police, for example, see themselves as a primary absolutely in the election. So it's another level. I don't know if that will work. If at that level they are engaged more robustly, like you engage
as partners. Like he said, the INEC could expand their scope, their network of the logistics area. Bring in other, especially the private sector transport system, and see what they can do, because they have narrowed it down to Nigerian, road transport workers, and they have done that for the past, I think, about 7 years, and there is still that problem of you not being sure that the bus will come on time. You will tell the buses that, look, all the drivers should park at INEC office in the evening, so that we will leave in the morning. By the morning, you will not see them.
Drivers will not show.
After collecting, because the agreement is that 50% of the money has to be given to them.
Probably that's where the problem is. Well, there's a third party between INEC and the direct drivers. So somebody contracted on their behalf. How are you so sure what trickles down to the real drivers or the real owner of the buses? Because National Union of Road Transport, they don't own buses. It's a union of owners of drivers.
It's an association.
It's an association of drivers of owners, but they are not the actual owners of the buses. So how are we so sure that
there's no direct contract?
There's no direct contract. So what we are saying now, maybe it's time to start having direct contact.
I'm not even sure. You are the lawyer here. I'm not sure that if you enter into a contract with an association, that you can seek a remedy because it's with the association. The man who breached the contract is just an individual in the association. I'm not sure INEC can even take anyone who fail to show up to court. I'm not sure that is possible.
Yeah, because having entered an agreement, the association that entered into an agreement with INEC has a duty to perform. So INEC can actually go to court against the association, but the question is, what remedy will you actually get? But they are not the real owners of the vehicle. So even if there's a judgment against the association, it might actually not address
the problem. So, I mean, there is another angle to all of this. Now, if there is an election, and usually in an election process, if you shift anything by even 1 minute or 30 minutes, it trickles. There is a dovetailing effect. The legal implication of extending this election, because if election voting is extended to tomorrow, then there is a legal implication, because the law permits, states how and the ways by which INEC can conduct these elections. But we'll take a break. And when we come back, we hear the legal implication, the operation, and you give us an insight into what is happening. We'll take a break, everyone. But when we come back, what is happening in relation to INEC, the conduct of Anambra governorship election, and the way forward. Join us again, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. The continued coverage of the Anambra governorship election. We're live for you here from our makeshift studio in Awka, the Anambra state capital. Welcome, everyone. It's not as expected, not what you envisaged, not what you thought of when we started out this morning, when we thought that this election will end at 2:30 p.m. as stipulated in INEC's guideline. But it does look now that we have to wait longer. Tonight, we are assessing what INEC has done and the delay in the conclusion of the polls. Mr. Akpopo Martins John is the first vice president of the Nigerian Bar Association, looking at the situation for us and analyzing. Mr. Izenwa Uwagu is a member of the board of Yaga Africa, one of the election observer group, and also a member of the civil society election situation room. Mr. Anyedi Ikowak was with INEC, is a former resident electoral commissioner with INEC. He served in Rivers and Bayelsa State, I think. So many states. And that's why you're able to give us a deep insight. So on this stretch of looking at the conduct and what INEC did, the implication of shifting or extending the voting, what can you tell us from a legal point of view? The implication of the extension?
Well, the implication is the election is still ongoing. Ordinarily, the election would have ended by 2:30 today. But since the election did not end and there was an extension, the legal implication is that election, we are seeing the electoral process. Voting is still ongoing. What we just have is a break. Tomorrow we continue. So the election has not ended. That is the legal implication. By the time INEC declared I didn't get exactly when they said the election is going to end by tomorrow, but that would be the actual legal date the election ended.
INEC didn't even say it's going to end tomorrow. They said as long as the voting continues. They
said the last person will vote.
But in fact, the problem was they said they were still even assessing the situation, that in some areas where there are difficulties, they will deploy, and as long as they are able to vote, they will vote.
I think they have the backing of the law to extend the period of elections, and until that process is completed. You know, it may be at the end of tomorrow, there may still be some pockets of places where the elections may not still hold. And INEC can then determine, because you must also know that even after determining the results of the elections, that results will now be looked at whether it has met up with the provisions of declaration. And if it does not make up with the provision of the declaration, you will still have elections that will be all inconclusive to conclude the elections. So the time is still there. That period of inconclusive elections is still part of the election.
But they did say that they are going to go ahead with coalition where the results are ready.
That was the information I have been seeking for, that I've just clarified. But what I saw was an extension. Yeah. But some social media report was saying till tomorrow. But now that it has been clarified that it is not till tomorrow, it is open-ended, I think it is really not good. We are likely going to run into some legal issues or some... yes, because...
It may not be open-ended. The fact is that after there may be collation of results. If that collation does not meet the declaration,
no,
there will now be an extension. That extension is what you may call...
Where I'm disagreeing is that there must be a time frame for voting to stop.
I think the statement of Dr. G is very clear. They are going to assess, which means that there has to be another update.
Yeah.
So that assessment will take place when they actually determine the number of polling units where this disruption took place. So we're expecting a further update. But what is important is that we do know that disruptions made because of the late opening, there is now an extension of time. So at the end of that extension of time, you are then going to assess generally. If they are satisfied that the requirement of the law has been satisfied, they will make a call. There is no, it happened in Bayelsa. Okay? So, because the challenge is that there is nothing that is happening that is new. the terrain, the Nigerian electoral topography is almost the same.
Anambra State is not even, you remember the Idemili factor. The
yes.
phenomenon in Idemili North and Idemili South
So
that delayed the conclusion of the election, I think in 2017 or so.
Yeah.
So I think it's not new to INEC, but the problem here is the INEC was sure of those local governments and those polling units and what at the time. But this time,
there is an assessment that will happen. So let's discuss.
I find it difficult. I find it difficult on the test of reasonability to just agree that what INEC is trying to do now is correct. To the extent that they fixed an election, that the election is going to start from 8:30 and end by 2:30 time frame. They extended it. By the time they were extending it. The parameters upon which they were relying on were known to them. In so and so place, no election takes place, no election took place. In so and so place, no election took place, no election took place. So they ought to know the data, the statistics where election did not take place is before them.
Because in law, actually, I think that
by 10:30, 55% of the, which is the half of the polling units, had opened and were running. Okay?
55%.
Yes, 55%.
At 10:30.
At 10:30.
Was that good enough?
No, that's what I'm saying. At least half. That's not good enough. But later in the day, many other places opened. So the challenge is to be able to access the places where these disruptions took place and where transportation challenges did not enable them to deploy. When you put all of that together, you can then cut out that place and say, we will do this tomorrow, or we will. And I think the law allows INEC. But if you read that statement, they kept talking about looking at what the law permits them to do. And if you know INEC, it's even in terms of how much of obedience to court orders, it has signposted itself as a strong rule of law organization, and I think we should encourage them to be able to do that.
I know Yaga Africa did a breakdown based on their PVT on how the polls open. I don't know.
On our PVT.
Well, here, you're a member of the board, I know. So if we can put that up and look at the sequence of what INEC did, in terms of poll opening, according to Yaga Africa, they say by 9:30 a.m., 28% of polling units commence accreditation and voting. By 10:30 a.m., 50% of polling units commence accreditation and voting. And at noon, 81% of polling units commence accreditation and voting. And it said also that 229 of 248 polling units reporting by 12:30 p.m. And I think it's just less than 20% that had issues by noon, which I think this is one of the places, this is one of the areas where the problem came from. Because by noon, it's 1%. Even if it's only 10% that you are not able to have election, it's still a problem.
No, even one person who has come out to vote, his right to vote has to be protected.
Let me look at it like this. Even that 20% is huge enough for INEC to extend voting. However, the question is, at the time INEC opened voting by 8:30, and they said 2:30 the voting will end, we know that if you come after 2:30, whether you are ready to vote or not, you might not be allowed to vote because the time has passed. The reason INEC is extending because they now know that the reasons why the voting could not be concluded was their own reason. That's why they are now extending time. But what I'm saying now is that if 20% from the data before us was the area that were not voting by 12 noon, INEC cannot tell us at this stage that they don't know the time.
That it will end.
It will end.
All right, let's look at further, because we need to wrap up this conversation. There are further details that Yaga Africa provided based on their data, in fact, based on the senatorial district in Anambra North, Anambra South, and Anambra Central. I hope that we'll be able to have that on the screen so we can just wrap up the conversation. Okay, there you go. So in Anambra Central, 64% had before 10:30 a.m. and not open by 12 noon, about 17%. In Anambra South, not open 22.5%. In Anambra North, not open by 12 noon, 13.2%. Let's wrap up this conversation. Your thoughts quickly, your final thought on this.
Well, what I want to say is that from my observation in the field, in areas where you had the problem with the device, there were voters there. And the law allows that in an election, when you say 2 o'clock, you are talking about the time for somebody to report to the polling unit. Somebody who must have been there before 2 o'clock will have to vote, even if you extend it to 10 o'clock in the night.
Yeah.
If he was there before 2 o'clock. So he will have to vote. So some of the voters who were there at the polling units and the device did not allow them to exercise their franchise, you can extend to whatsoever time that you can accommodate them. That is what the law says.
All right, we need to close.
I'm not saying that they don't have the right to extend. I want to make that point very clear. But we now have the statistics of the percentage of inaccessibility to voting materials or to vote. Therefore, it will not be too right for INEC to make it an open-ended. There must be some specifics.
All right,
because some
Mr.
specifics.
Yeah, on this conduct, on what we have, the stalemate. What is the way forward?
Well, the way forward is to update us, to keep us in the know. The transparency that has followed this process needs to continue, and that's important, so that a lot of people are brought up to scratch as to what the situation.
I must sincerely thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Mr. Akpoko Martins John, first Vice President of the NBA, thank you for coming. Mr. Ezenwa, I will detain you, not like the police would do, but we stay with us on the program. And Mr. Aniedi Ikewag, it's good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Now,
Nice to see you again.
Thank you so much, a former resident electoral commissioner with INEC. Thank you so much for coming. We'll take a break, everyone. And when we come back, it's going to be straight up on security. What was done and what was not done. We assess the situation. The election is not over. We are monitoring. Some people are still voting. What is INEC saying? We also try to reach out to INEC to hear from their own side of things, how they want to move forward from this stalemate. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us in this continued coverage of the Anambra governorship election. You're on to Channels Television. I will bring you some of those things you need to know as far as this election is concerned. It does look like that we have a stalemate, and the election continues. We thought that it would have ended at 2:30 p.m. voting, that is, but because of some reasons, it has to continue. I'll allow you to again listen to the resident electoral commissioner of INEC, Dr. Kichuku Orji, whom we spoke to earlier on, and there was another press conference. But it was when we spoke with him earlier that he explained the reasons why they had to extend the timing. He spoke about the disruption and the resistance they saw in some communities, and also the failure coming from some of the transport companies that was supposed to work with them. I'll allow you to take a listen to Dr. Okichukwu Orji, the rep of INEC in Anambra State.
Part of the reports we got regarding our deployment in the different polling units, we were not able to fully deploy in some of the polling units, and because of several reasons. One, we were prevented by community members in some local governments from deploying, so we had resistance from community members. In others, we had our materials, election materials, snatched and destroyed. Example is Oba 1 and Oba 2 wards, RAs, in Idemili South local government, where materials for up to 57 polling units were snatched away.
So what are you going to do in that respect? Do you have alternative plans? Because if materials are snatched and destroyed, what would you do? Do you have alternative to replace them, or what are you doing to the election in those areas? Are you postponing election in those areas, or what are you doing exactly?
This is a decision that will be taken after this, but the process has to be completed, and then a thorough assessment of what has happened will take place, and then the commission will now be in a position to state the next line of action. I don't consider them major security issue because the security situation has been very pleasant to us. In fact, it's a pleasant surprise to many who expected that there will be breakdown of law and order in Anambra in the course of this election. But you can see that everything went on quite smoothly, quite peacefully. The challenges we had were that some of the transporters that we had made arrangements with and paid their sign-on fees upfront had reneged and declined to offer their services. And some of the ad hoc staff that we had recruited could not continue, dropped out in the process.
All right. So you heard the President Electoral Commissioner, Dr. Oji, there on some of the challenges they face. There's a lot of it relating to security. And that's why our next conversation is about security. I'm now being joined by Mr. Echenge Cheng. He's the Commissioner of Police in Anambra State. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And lovely to call that name. I hope I pronounced it properly.
Yeah, you did.
All right. And Mr. Zenwagu, who's been detained here in our studio. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Nwagu. And also we have Mr. Obio Everestus. He's the State Commandant of the NSC. Thank you so much for coming. You're welcome. All right. First and foremost, the REC tried to be diplomatic. He said he won't consider what they face today as a major security threat. But we know it's major in the sense that that is some of the reasons why election has to be extended in the state. Have you made any arrest in that respect?
We haven't made any arrest. And if I heard the REC well, Dr. Oji, what he said was that whatever happened today, he didn't consider the security problem. And he gave good news. Security that was.
That was why I said he was trying to be diplomatic.
Well,
but if you heard what he said, that several hundreds of ballot papers were snatched. And they were disallowed. That's the REC. That was the man who was in charge of the election.
I'm the commissioner of police.
So you have not heard
that. You should tell me about that.
There's no synergy between both of you?
There is. I am the co-chair of ISEC in this state.
But that was what he said on camera.
And we spoke severally today.
But are you aware that there was some disruption? People were not allowed to go into some communities in the state.
I didn't get that report.
So it brings us to the agency commission need not be on ground words and in the sense that if Mkwachukwuoji saying that ballot boxes were snatched in the area and that and the commissioner was not aware.
There's a problem.
It raises huge question.
So that's why I'm asking the question, Mr. Nwagu.
It raises huge question about coordination, and I don't think this is the time to be territorial in terms of protecting your territory. If the police, NSDC, will deploy 34,000 men for this election, and NSDC will deploy 20,000, according to the deputy commander and Deputy National Commandant that was here earlier today, it calls to question why we should be able to tolerate this. And this has to do with service delivery and value for money.
All right, because CP, you know the reason why himself and I, we've had this conversation a lot today, and we had a lot of optimism. Everybody gave a lot of support to the police, to the security agencies. The trust was there. We're excited that you're going to deliver on your promises. But the question is, there is a major snag on the process because there is an extension of the timing.
question, I want to think that more than 90-something% of the problem we have today was not security problem. It was INEC related. Talk about transportation, talk about ad hoc staff that were supposed to be or man the polling booth. And at the time they were supposed to be there, they were not there. You talk about transporters who refused to convey materials except they are paid their money, and it took them time to do this. Some of the places that you never had election was because, when the materials got to the place late. So these are not security-related issues.
But, I mean, did your men also report any instance of resistance of some community not allowing INEC staff to gain access?
I don't have that report.
That's one of the reasons INEC gave for the extension.
I can categorically state that. I don't have that report. I don't have it.
So, I mean, what report do you have that you can tell us?
The report I had was that security was everywhere. And election was going on smoothly. As I speak, they are the collation center trying to collect. And after that, they will come to, okay, here. I don't have any serious report of any incident.
No reports at all, security-wise?
Maybe, of course, there were maybe instances where you had a little bit of, infraction somewhere, and quickly we took care of them. But not to this extent that we are hearing here, that it is because of security that the election has been shifted tomorrow. I don't agree with that assessment.
Ms. Obio, what's your assessment? Your people, because your people were manning critical infrastructure. That's your mandate. Yeah. Did you get any reports otherwise?
I very much it's also on the field at the national critical infrastructure. We were actually in place all over them, and we were talking of coordination. When the REC has observed any infraction, he is supposed to let the security be aware. As far as I'm concerned, we have not had anything. Otherwise, he is supposed to have given that information to the necessary agents or authority that will have quickly gone there to find out if actually it is true. But I have one thing to say, that in a place like election, before now, we've been having some sort of this type of thing you are mentioning about, and it doesn't call for any serious questioning compared with the high security network we placed today to making sure that the election went on smoothly. So by and large, it's new to me to hear there is such thing, but I cannot say for sure whether it is 100% because the matter ought to have been brought to the notice of the agents. I would have quickly gone in there to see what actually is happening. And for the fact that
there were okay, CP,
yes, let me add to that. Throughout the day, we had this problem of dealing with what I would want to call fake news. We saw online that there was shooting and killing at Kulobia, which was not true. We saw online incident at Uyi, which was not true. We also saw an incident or heard of an incident in northern Idemili, which was not true. And we have reported all that. And we know it is not true, that people were just out there maybe to cause panic or to peddle news that was false. And some of this we have also corrected, taken up with INEC today in their office. Because I have an assistant commissioner of police in INEC. And when issues came up, I know I called him. I said, this is what I'm hearing. Go find out, because what I have is not exactly what you have. And eventually, he dealt with the REC. And it was just what we got. So I don't know where this is coming from, actually.
Have you tried to meet with the REC since this extension of time? Because one of the questions I asked him, you know that the IG gave an order of restriction of movement from 11:59 a.m.
yesterday
to 11:59 today.
Yes.
But if elections are going to continue,
Yes.
do you have an update of whether or not there will be extension of the curfew that has been placed on this state?
I don't think that will happen. For one, it's like more than 95% of elections have been done. So if at all election is going to be held in those places that they were not done today, I'm sure we just need to provide security and control. And the issue of security in this state is not only about election. We have been here, we have provided security, and we made plans for this election, before the election, during the election, and post-election. So we are still on ground. So if the election is extended tomorrow, I'm sure for the fact that it's just a few places, we will be able to conduct it without having to restrict movement in the whole state.
Did you experience the issue of this transport who did not report at any place that you wanted to take?
To the best of my knowledge, unless the time the wreck has said so, we know that there was heavy flow of traffic, transporters hired to be on ground for them. Everywhere was, agog with activities of INEC, voters, security.
So, I mean, is it that what INEC, the reason INEC gave is not true?
No, I can't say that is not true because
I'm saying that the reasons for the late commencement and the technology problems they have. I mean, since you also infrastructure, security infrastructure is part of. I don't know if you experience.
You know
your men experience the failure of those infrastructures. So.
You know that every one of the INEC has its own role to play. The security agency has its own role to play. The voters have their own role to play. So, on the part of INEC, maybe they have discovered that transportation is their problem. And so it's supposed to be peculiar to them. They have to sort it out. Like we, the security, we have our own challenges. We have our challenges before, during, and after, which we are contending with. And by God's grace, we'll be able to give you the results as we are seeing it today. So if we are talking of transportation, it's not our business, because it's a business of INEC to hire transporters, to hire people that can do whatever to them. So every agency or every department has its own role.
What are you hearing from your men that are on the field at the moment? Some of them that are supposed to have moved from polling units may still be there, supposed to have gone to the local government areas or the collation centers.
On my own area, we didn't have any problem with transporting our personnel to their various polling units.
I'm saying your men, because now there's an extension of the timing of the voting. So your men will still have to remain, because you deploy some of them to the polling units. They have to remain there.
Yes.
Have you gotten any reports?
Yes, for security reasons, for security's sake, we have to, if the REC has communicated the agency now, because I know maybe it could be as a result of a little gap in communication, that could have resulted why the security agencies are not aware of this little restaurant now. By and large, it's very little. So if in event it's really true that such time has been extended, definitely we have already, we had it as a rumor. I won't fail. It's a rumor. And we should also bear in mind that, like the CP said, fake rumors abound. But let us believe somehow. So if that is the case, it means we have to keep our men there, making sure that things go smoothly at the last count.
Mr. Nwago, there is a major issue here in relation, because security are holding their ground that we've done our work. This problem is not security. If you guys thought that there will be a breakdown of law and order, you'll be disappointed. There won't be any such a thing, any of such. But it is where we did not expect that this problem was coming from. Your assessment of security situation, Mr. Nwago?
Well, like I said, I think the security agencies were battling extraneous threats. The attention was heavy on extraneous very threats that that we are going to happen. But if the resident electoral commissioner will pinpoint Oba 1, Oba 2,
Idemili,
Idemili. So my expectation is very simple. From what we're told, we're supposed to have security men at the polling units, unarmed policemen, security agents at the polling unit. And then at the outer layer, armed men. So if that infraction happens, I think it's important that we identify the folks who were deployed, the security agents who were deployed to that particular place. Because now there's a concentration. You know where the official is talking about. So when I talk about coordination, I'm talking about that getting back, because we don't expect in this situation that you get a report after the event, because people are already supposed to be manning that particular place. So if the man said their materials were snatched in those two places, the question that I will ask as an ordinary Nigerian is, what then happened to the folks who were supposed to protect the voters there, the materials, and the men? So it's about our attitude to service delivery. And what you have is that territorialism. I say, oh, if the man says they snatched my material, everybody is now saying, you know, I'm not aware, I don't know. But it happened. And we have an extension of time. And if we have an extension of time, what we need to do is to understand that we are all in this together. I talk for the security. I guarantee, I'm talking about, you know, boasting about their capacity to provide, secure the voters on the basis of my interaction with the commissioner and some other security agencies. If there's any drop in that, there has to be an explanation. And the way to do that is not to say, oh, I don't know, this person has not carried us along. That's the Nigerian thing. We should be able to deal, because there are policemen, security agents who were posted to Oba 1 and Oba 2. We should ask them questions. Did this happen? If it happened, why didn't you get back to your superiors to let them know that it happened? Did you explain that to me? That's important.
CP, you want to react to that?
I want to really react to that. Before this election, people thought that Anambra was the battleground. In fact, people came into Anambra to experience that not what they expected. And for today's election, people thought that Anambra was going to burn. And at the end of the day, what do we have? The security agencies will be commended for a thorough job we have. I am still saying that the reason why the election is shifted or postponed till tomorrow is not a security issue. You know that. I discussed things like me and Rick, we talk morning, afternoon, and evening. And I know what we discussed. You don't have your logistics problem, which was not taken care of, which you took care of course. But because of fear in the people, they didn't come out. And I know that there were instances, even in Oyi here, that we had to use our police vehicle to convey materials to where they are supposed to go. But this issue is not a security problem. I'm not saying we didn't have pockets of fractions here and there, which you shall, but the response was prompt and care of them.
All right. I think we should take a break because the tension that we're seeing as relating to the anxiety that the election is not concluding as at the time that we envisage is not giving us that feeling that we expected as at this moment. But we'll take a break. And there are other dimensions to this conversation on the security that we're focused on this part of the program. Stay with us, everyone. Please, the continued coverage of the Anambra governorship election 2021. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back. everyone on our continued coverage of Anambra governorship election. The CP of Anambra State, Mr. Chenge Cheng, Mr. Ezenwa Nwagu, and Mr. Obiyo Everstrust is the commandant of the NSCDC in Anambra State. Thank you so much. Do you think there were some kind of disparity in your deployment? Or can you give us the rationale behind your deployment? Because one would think that based on the voting population, that's how your deployment would have gone. Was that how you deployed?
Before this election, we did our threat analysis of every. What you have just said was a part of it, and the major threat level in every part of it. Anambra is bordered by 6 different states. And some of those states are more vulnerable, like Abia, Imo, Enugu. We took that into consideration because we discovered that most of the problems come from us, like they strike in here, kill people, and then get out. So we had to concentrate especially more at the border towns, which was mostly the southern Anambra South kind of. So that was the concentration, the threat level.
Okay. That prompted that informed your deployment.
Yes, deployment.
So let me ask you made some arrests before now.
Yes.
Were some of those violent before the election related?
Not really. This is the place where we have the IPOP threat. We also have those who hide under IPOP to commit crimes. And then the political aspect, that the polity was heated up because of the election. And then the issue of cultism and then the thuggery aspect. But for the arrests that we made, they were not political nature, because we had made arrest of a commander of IPOP somewhere, and also picked people in some other places for related issues. So it wasn't political, because there was no reason why you pick up somebody because it has political.
Dr. Akoyili was killed recently. What can you tell us about that incident?
The incident actually happened before I resumed as.
Any update that you have gotten so far?
Yes, investigation is still ongoing, and we won't be able to discuss that here because kind of a lot of way.
Well, arrests have been made, are they?
Arrests have not been made, but I am sure from what we have that very soon we'll be able to make arrests because we have intel on certain things and also certain people that we think must have been involved in that particular act, and we have
people of interest. You've identified them in that case. There are a few pockets of incidents also that happened, which also stoked the already tensed atmosphere. And that's why I was asking whether or not they were politically related, because politicians were already saying that they were politically motivated. Is that true?
Well, I know that during an election like this, a lot of issues come up. But I don't think that any of the arrests was related, and I don't think that it was that bad.
All right. So the reason why I'm asking this question is that for a lot of people who live in Anambra, they thought, oh, it's the election that has brought the tension. But after the election, you will see everything without. And when you say that it is not related to the election, or it's not politically related, that means that it's an existential problem. Is an issue that can linger much after the election. Is that true?
No, I'm not saying so. It was the problem. The problem was there before, and I'm not taking credit, but I know that for the past 1 month I've been here, or 3 weeks I've been here as Anambra has.
What did you do?
I'm coming to that. Anambra has very relative income, and so the issue of maybe that tension being raised or the level of threat being raised before the election was not really there. What did we do? The security agencies came together, researched, and did a robust analysis and put up a plan on how to checkmate what is happening in Anambra. Synergy has been perfect amongst intels have been coming in, and we have been working on it. Persons of interest have been picked up, they have talked to us, and we have extended our investment. So I think that most persons knew that whatever leverage I had before, that was not going to be the party.
Because it worried a lot of people,
yeah,
that the light of the light of the nation may have been dimmed by this sort of violence. Will it shine brighter like it used to be after now?
Yes, I think right. Because we are still working to improve on whatever we have done.
You think that after this election, things will go back
I am
to
not
normal?
saying that things will return back to a perfect normal. That's not what I'm saying. But that situation will be better than what we have present. Because we're working. The military is working. Military, I mean the army, the navy, police, PSS. We meet almost twice every week in my office. Just review threats, review what we have done, see where we didn't get it right, and being proactive to be able to preempt.
Does it suffice to say most of the violence and incidents in Anambra State are mostly external, they are not usually internal?
Yes, you cannot say they are totally external. I wouldn't say so.
All right. Mr. Nwago, for today, what big lesson do you think we can take out of this election, security-wise?
For me, it's community resilience. I saw the Anambra people determined that they want to have, and that gladdened my heart. The other thing that I have been reflecting on when it concerns security, I don't want to see us treating crimes that are committed during election differently. Every crime, whether it's committed during election or, should be treated as a crime. So people cannot hide, because there is also that tendency for people who have scores that the pre-election observation, the third pre of Yaga Africa, identified among other things that that violence was going to be a threat. But inside that threat narrative is that you also have issues around intercommunal clashes that existed. You had issues of cult-related things. So all of them were masking under this election situation to cause havoc. So we need to have communities that are strong, that are resilient, that are determined. Because even if you bring all the security, if the community people, we've seen examples where the community people want to find ballot, and the community people said them and said they can't do that. So now with the kind of security architecture that we have seen in the state, I don't think we should take it out immediately after the election. I think it's important to mop up and still deal with the existential challenges that exist in the issue of cultism, issue of communal crisis, and take them out. Because otherwise, you would think that you are dealing with an extraneous situation. But like the Yorubas will say, what if just beneath it, even if people come from outside, if there is no conducive environment to fester within them, they will not. This election has proven that Anambra people are resilient, courageous, and determined, and I think we should praise them for that.
Would you advise that this exercise continues at night considering the security situation in Anambra State?
Really, you see, yes, I think considering the political, the situation which by God's grace we're able to bring down the various. For this exercise to continue staying overnight, I think the Resident Electoral Commission has have second look, if at all there is need. On our side, like we said, we have provided all that is necessary for us to bring about conducive voting, conducive election, conducive environment. So, depends if they so wish. But on my own side, I don't think keeping the election the night. By the way, who would even like to come out in the night to queue up to, cast a vote? There are certain areas that, if the challenges are not much, have to be overlooked. If actually he thinks the challenges are such that can come up, extend the exercise beyond the normal time, it's left for them to, take a decision about it and communicate to us. We will still be on ground to do what we have to do.
Well, the CP said there were no arrests made. Is that the case also in your own case?
We never made any arrest of any type attending the
were there any kind of infraction?
No, there wasn't any.
No attempt on any critical infrastructure?
There wasn't.
No report whatsoever from your
the detailed reports I have got across the state, we've never had any case of any infraction on the critical national infrastructure, both at the federal, located here, the state, located here, and as well the local government here as well. We have not had any infraction about
there were attacks, a few attacks on FRSC, DSS, in Anambra.
When?
A few weeks ago.
Few weeks. Can you be precise? Because
I can't remember precisely the local government area, but there were.
Yes.
In Ewe, thank you so much. There were. From your own assessment, what did you do did you reinforce security on that?
Yes, actually, nobody is not aware of what the challenges we are passing through as of then till today, when God has, given us the courage to stand where we are. There, security was there, and maybe a criminal is always a criminal, can disguise in any way to foment trouble. At the slightest excuse you will not want. So, in those cases, we stand ahead of time. But quite unfortunately, the infraction that took place that time, I don't think it will ever repeat again. But maybe we're taken unaware, but it cannot repeat.
So, CP, is there any, because I asked the civil defense commandant whether or not it's okay to go ahead with the exercise at this time.
If you ask me, considering our peculiar security situation in the state, it is not okay. But we took care of this because we had contingency and because we know that sometimes, whether we like it or not, the process will go into the night. And I tell you why we are not afraid of anything is that all the securities that were at the polling booths have all been collapsed to the rack center. So as I speak, we have enough security. Even if the process will go on till daybreak, I am sure there's not going to be any problem.
Even when, even the collation, would you advise that it goes in? Because usually we always keep vigil when it comes to election collation.
Well, if INEC want to continue, ours is to provide security. And I'm saying that we have enough on ground to provide that security for the process to go on seamless.
Mr. Wago. The question, what he just said, is there's a caveat. You may not go ahead at night. It will be good to do it in broad daylight.
This show is INEX show. Let's take it. Like the city said, he's the co-chair the Intelligence Consultative Committee on Elections. But in the pyramid of election, INEC occupies the topmost. So if, for instance, even if the election had gone on well, coalition could enter into the night. So this is what we already know. You understand?
Statutory.
So if they extend the time in some places, it can't be in all the places. If they extend the time in some of the, like I said, the challenge is not so much about security. The challenge is about the determination of the community, the people themselves, who I saw today did canopies, brought chairs to sit down to vote,
brought refreshments
for themselves and the rest of them. If they are determined they want to go ahead, the security have no choice than to ensure that they are protected, and that's why we are all here. So for instance, Riaga has 21 coalition observers set ready, who have been trained to go and observe coalition, and it's supposed to. If we are to have, if the election had ended at 2:30, we're expecting results tomorrow, and sometimes even the INEC results, what the coalition center should be set for the night. Sometimes you start by 2 a.m. and I saw you sometimes putting your head off.
The difference here is voting and the coalition.
So during the voting things, people who are already on the queue. The last person on the queue has to vote.
That was done. Everything was completed for
but if in their assessment, like these places that they are mentioning, they need to capture those places and get things going there. It's their call, but there is nothing. The law does not prohibit them from continuing tomorrow morning. It's what has happened severally. You can finish up the voting tomorrow and then collate the remaining of those areas and then announce the result.
All right.
So we are not in very difficult situation.
But not just in a comfortable situation.
We are not in a difficult.
Let's wrap up now. Mr. Obio, what are your final thoughts on the situation and going forward?
My findings, we can see it that the findings are all there for us to see it that we are on a right course, and actually the situation on ground is very conducive for us to move forward. And we were asking the question, how do we do immediately after? Are we going to still replace the security situation as it is today beyond the election period? And that the answer there is that it is. We are going to even provide more. So we are envisaging a situation that is going to be more, understanding, more peace, more, progress in the state as today has, given us.
To congratulate. You see, with all the bashing and all of that happened, I think that his men and some of the other security just discharged their responsibility creditably, at least in warding off substantially the external threat. That the other issues, pockets of things that happen within the polling unit, things that we know for elections. There is no way you would have elections and you will see some people try to snatch ballot box or all of those things. The bigger fear that we had was the one that that made it difficult for quite a lot of people. But incidentally, all the hotels here are taken. There is no, so sometimes when people still say they were feeling unsafe and they still travel down, it really worries me what they are thinking. And in Edo State, we didn't see the number of donor partners that are in this election. You were there because of the intel about how. But in Anambra, incidentally, we have over 500 different observer groups on ground in Anambra, and that for me is a signal that sometimes, even when fake news travels very far, the truth confronts it practically and directly.
Chased after it and sometimes overtakes it. So, Mr. Cheng, I'll give you the last word on the program tonight. It does look like you have a badge of honor, and deservedly, you deserve it. A lot of people will say, in the case of what we've seen today, because if there were violence, if there's bloodletting, we probably will not be sitting down to talk in this manner. We probably will be talking in another kind of scenario. But what would your final thought be on the program tonight?
For the security, I think we did very well. Because, like I said,
you're marking your own script now.
Yeah, that's it's a physical something.
It's there for you to see, right?
You will see. So like I said before now, people thought that Anambra was a battleground. There are many people who thought that there won't be election today. But we are proud to say that election has been held, and the situation we find ourselves is a comfortable one. And whatever is the left over, I am sure we're going to do better. We want to serve the people of this. We want to give them the security. And also we are proud to be part of it, that the people of Anambra, the people of Anambra came out, vote, exercise their franchise, to elect the government that is their own.
All right.
So we are good to
Mr. Cheng, the Commissioner of Police in Anambra State, Mr. Izenwawagu, our very good friend. You are now released. I won't hand you over to the Commissioner of Police, as we spoke about off camera. But because you are my very good friend, I will let you go in peace. Thank you so much on a lighter note. Thank you so much, Mr. Izenwawagu, for staying with us for this time. Thank you so much. And Mr. Obio, the Commandant of the NSCDC in Anambra State, thank you so much also for coming. And I must sincerely thank our viewers for staying with us through these 2 hours of the coverage this evening. It is not over. We are still in your face, and we are in your ears to give you all you need to know in this continued coverage of Anambra Governorship Election 2021. We'll be live for you as soon as we get updates for you. Just stay with us, everyone, and look at your screen. You get information, and watch out. We'll be back on air as soon as we get some information for you. I'm sure Kimale, thank you so much on behalf of the crew here in Awka and in Lagos. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Stay with us. Our continued coverage on Anambra Governorship Election as we hand you over to Lagos to continue our programming that we continue. Thank you so much, everyone.